17. Effect a regression. People who have experienced a certain kind of pleasure in the past will try to repeat it or relive it. The deepest rooted and most pleasurable memories are usually those from earliest childhood and are often unconsciously associated with a parental figure. Bring your targets back to that point by placing yourself in the edible triangle and positioning them as the needy child. Unaware of the cause of their emotional response, they will fall in love with you. Alternatively, you too can regress, letting them play the role of the protecting, nursing parent. In either case, you are offering the ultimate fantasy, the chance to have an intimate relationship with mommy or daddy, son or daughter. As adults, we tend to overvalue our childhood. In their dependency and powerlessness, children genuinely suffer. Yet when we get older, we conveniently forget about that and sentimentalize the supposed paradise we have left behind. We forget the pain and remember only the pleasure. Why? Because the responsibilities of adult life are a burden so oppressive at times that we secretly yearn for the dependency of childhood, for that person who looked after our every need, assumed our cares and worries. This daydream of ours has a strong erotic component, for the child's feeling of being dependent on the parent is charged with sexual undertones. Give people a sensation similar to that protected, dependent feeling of childhood, and they will project all kinds of fantasies onto you, including feelings of love or sexual attraction that they will attribute to something else. We won't admit it, but we long to regress, to shed our adult exterior and vent the childish emotions that linger beneath the surface. Early in his career, Sigmund Freud confronted a strange problem. Many of his female patients were falling in love with him. He thought he knew what was happening. Encouraged by Freud, the patient would delve into her childhood, which of course was the source of her illness or neurosis. She would talk about her relationship with her father, her earliest experiences of tenderness and love, and also of neglect and abandonment. The process would stir up powerful emotions and memories. In a way, she would be transported back into her childhood. Intensifying this effect was the fact that Freud himself said little and made himself a little cold and distant, although he seemed to be caring. In other words, quite like the traditional father figure. Meanwhile, the patient was lying on a couch in a helpless or passive position, so that the situation duplicated the roles of parent and child. Eventually, she would begin to direct some of the confused emotions she was dealing with toward Freud himself. Unaware of what was happening, she would relate to him as to her father. She would regress and fall in love. Freud called this phenomenon transference, and it would become an active part of his therapy. By getting patients to transfer some of their repressed feelings onto the therapist, he would bring their problems into the open, where they could be dealt with on a conscious level. The transference effect was so potent, though, that Freud was often unable to move his patients past their infatuation. In fact, transference is a powerful way of creating an emotional attachment, the goal of any seduction. The method has infinite applications outside psychoanalysis. To practice it in real life, you need to play the therapist, encouraging people to talk about their childhood. Most of us are only too happy to oblige, and our memories are so vivid and emotional that a part of us regresses just in talking about our early years. Also, in the course of talking, little secrets slip out. We reveal all kinds of valuable information about our weaknesses and our mental makeup, information you must attend to and remember. Don't take your target's words at face value. They will often sugarcoat or overdramatize events in childhood. But pay attention to their tone of voice, to any nervous tics as they talk, and particularly to anything they don't want to talk about, anything they deny, or that makes them emotional. Many statements actually mean their opposite. Should they say they hated their father, for instance, you can be sure that they are hiding a lot of disappointment, that they actually loved their father only too much, and perhaps never quite got what they wanted from him. Listen closely for recurring themes and stories. Most important, learn to analyze emotional responses and see what lies behind them. While they talk, maintain the therapist's pose, attentive but quiet, making occasional non-judgmental comments. Be caring yet distant, somewhat blank in fact, and they will begin to transfer emotions and project fantasies onto you. With the information you have gathered about their childhood and the trusting bond you have forged, you can now begin to effect the regression. Perhaps you have uncovered a powerful attachment to a parent, a sibling, a teacher, or any early infatuation, a person who casts a shadow over their present lives. Knowing what it was about this person that affected them so powerfully, you can now take over that role. Or perhaps you've learned of an immense gap in their childhood, a neglectful father, for instance. You act like that parent now, but you replace the original neglect with the attention and affection that the real parent never supplied. Everyone has unfinished business from childhood, disappointments, lacks, painful memories. Finish what is unfinished. Discover what your target never got, and you have the ingredients for a deep-rooted seduction. The key is not just to talk about memories. That is weak. What you want is to get people to act out in their present old issues from their past without their being aware of what is happening. The regressions you can effect fall into 4 main types. The infantile regression. The first bond, the bond between a mother and her infant, is the most powerful one. Unlike other animals, human babies have a long period of helplessness during which they are dependent on their mother, creating an attachment that influences the rest of their lives. The key to effecting this regression is to reproduce the sense of unconditional love a mother has for her child. Never judge your targets. Let them do whatever they want, including behaving badly. At the same time, surround them with loving attention. Smother them with comfort. A part of them will regress to those earliest years when their mother took care of everything and rarely left them alone. This works on almost everyone, for unconditional love is the rarest and most treasured form. You don't even have to tailor your behavior to anything specific in their childhood. Most of us have experienced this kind of attention. Meanwhile, create atmospheres that reinforce the feeling you are generating. Warm environments, playful activities, bright, happy colors. The edible regression. After the bond between mother and child comes the edible triangle of mother, father, and child. This triangle forms during the period of the child's earliest erotic fantasies. A boy wants his mother to himself. A girl does the same with her father, but they never quite have it that way. For a parent will always have competing connections to a spouse or to other adults. Unconditional love has gone. Now, inevitably, the parent must sometimes deny what the child desires. Transport your victims back to this period. Play a parental role. Be loving, but also sometimes scold and instill some discipline. Children actually love a little discipline. It makes them feel that the adult cares about them. And adult children, too, will be thrilled if you mix your tenderness with a little toughness and punishment. Unlike infantile regression, edible regression must be tailored to your target. It depends on the information you have gathered. Without knowing enough, you might treat a person like a child, scolding them now and then, only to discover that you are stirring up ugly memories. They had too much discipline as a child. Or you might stir up memories of a parent they loathed, and they will transfer those feelings to you. Don't go ahead with the regression until you have learned everything you can about their childhood, what they had too much of, what they lacked, and so on. If the target was strongly attached to a parent, but that attachment was partially negative, the edible regression strategy can still be quite effective. We always feel ambivalent toward a parent. Even as we love them, we resent having had to depend on them. Don't worry about stirring up these ambivalences which don't keep us from being tied to our parents. Remember to include an erotic component in your parental behavior. Now your targets are not only getting their mother or father all to themselves, they're getting something more, something previously forbidden, but now allowed. The ego ideal regression. As children, we often form an ideal figure out of our dreams and ambitions. First, that ideal figure is the person we want to be. We imagine ourselves as brave adventurers, romantic figures. Then, in our adolescence, we turn our attention to others, often projecting our ideals onto them. The first boy or girl we fall in love with may seem to have the ideal qualities we wanted for ourselves, or else may make us feel that we can play that ideal role in relation to them. Most of us carry these ideals around with us, buried just below the surface. We are secretly disappointed in how much we have had to compromise, how far below the ideal we have fallen as we have gotten older. Make your targets feel they are living out this youthful ideal and coming closer to being the person they wanted to be, and you will affect a different kind of regression, creating a feeling reminiscent of adolescence. The relationship between you and the seduced is in this instance more equal than in the previous kinds of regressions, more like the affection between siblings. In fact, the ideal is often modeled on a brother or sister. To create this effect, strive to reproduce the intense, innocent mood of a youthful infatuation. The reverse parental regression. Here, you are the one to regress. You deliberately play the role of the cute, adorable, yet also sexually charged child. Older people always find younger people incredibly seductive. In the presence of youth, they feel a little of their own youth return. But they are in fact older, and mixed into the invigoration they feel in younger people's company is the pleasure of playing the mother or father to them. If a child has erotic feelings toward a parent, feelings that are quickly repressed, the parent must deal with the same problem in reverse. Assume the role of the child in relation to your targets, however, and they get to act out some of those repressed erotic sentiments. The strategy may seem to call for a difference in age, but this is actually not critical. Marilyn Monroe's exaggerated little girl qualities work just fine on men her age. Emphasizing a weakness or vulnerability on your part will give the target a chance to play the protector.